All right, get ready for our deep dive, this time into Back to the Future Part 3.
Oh, a classic.
It is, and we always get great stuff from you, so many good articles and notes.
Well, we're going to uncover all the good stuff, right?
Absolutely, we're going to explore how this film kind of wraps up the whole trilogy, right? How does it all end? We're going to look at that Wild West setting.
Totally different, yeah.
So different. Doc Brown's character, how Marty McFly grows up a little bit. And then, of course, how the movie balances, all the fun stuff with the time travel complexities that make this series so iconic.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting here is that this one, it kind of is a little different approach than the first two.
Okay.
It's less about those, like, mind-bending paradoxes of time travel.
Right.
And more about, like, the personal journeys of these characters that we've, now come to love.
I like that. Yeah, I like that take. Okay, so let's start with that Wild West setting, right?
Yeah.
Dusty streets, saloons, showdowns.
Yeah.
It's like they just went all in on classic Western tropes. But
And they did a great job with it.
they did. I was reading through these articles, though, and I was thinking, they didn't just randomly pick a time period, right? They really thought about how this setting impacts the story,
Yeah.
the characters,
Yeah.
and especially Doc Brown.
Yeah, I think it's really brilliant how they managed to blend those Western elements with that signature Back to the Future humor.
Yes.
We get those classic visuals like the gunfights, the saloons, but they're always there's always a little wink and a nod to the audience.
Yeah.
The filmmakers, they put a lot of effort into recreating 1885 Hill Valley,
I bet.
but it's not a completely accurate historical representation.
Of course not.
It's very romanticized vision of the Old West with a bit of that Back to the Future charm mixed in.
It's like they made it their own. Yeah, I love that. And speaking of charm, Doc Brown in this setting,
He comes alive.
oh my gosh, he comes alive. He is thriving.
Yeah.
It's like this setting was made for him.
It's like we're seeing a different side of him in this film.
In the previous movies, he was always the quirky inventor, the mentor guiding Marty through the complexities of time travel.
Right.
But here in the Old West, he's more than that.
He's resourceful.
He's resourceful, he's brave.
He finds love.
He even finds love.
Come on.
And that's where it gets really fascinating.
Right.
Because this romance with Clara Clayton, the school teacher, it reveals a vulnerability in him
Yes.
that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, these articles, they point out how this relationship humanizes Doc in a way that just wasn't there before, right?
Yeah.
He was always like the eccentric scientist, but
Yeah,
now...
He was almost like a caricature.
Yes, exactly. And now he's willing to put himself out there, risk his heart.
Mm-hmm.
It adds a whole new layer of complexity to his character.
Exactly. He's not just worried about paradoxes and alternate timelines anymore.
Right.
He's dealing with real human emotions, and it's impacting his decisions in a way we haven't seen before.
Which I find fascinating.
His love for Clara, it creates this internal conflict. Oh, yeah.
He knows he has to get back to his own time.
He does, yeah.
But part of him wants to stay in the past with her.
It's like head versus heart.
Right.
Which, that's always been a theme, right?
Absolutely.
And this film, it just like dives into that tension.
It dives right in.
Oh, for sure.
Ah.
And while all that's going on with Doc, Marty's over here learning some hard lessons about himself, too.
Oh, yeah.
Still got that
Yeah.
impulsiveness,
Yeah.
that need to prove himself, which almost gets him killed.
That whole refusing to back down when someone calls him yellow.
Oh, come on.
Classic Western trope, right?
Oh, it's so good. But you have to remember
Yeah.
that in the Wild West, that's a direct attack on your courage and your honor.
It is, yeah.
And for Marty, who always struggled with, living up to his dad's legacy,
Yeah.
it's like a challenge he can't ignore.
Right. And it's important to understand that this fear of being seen as a coward is deeply rooted in Marty's family history.
Oh, tell me more.
We've seen how his father, George McFly, was bullied and belittled in the past, and Marty is determined to break that cycle.
He wants to be different.
He does, but in Back to the Future Part 3, that need to prove himself almost gets him killed in a standoff with Buford Mad Dog Tannen.
Oh, Buford.
Yeah, Buford.
Another Tannen.
Another Tannen.
Huh.
Biff Tannen's ancestor, so we've got that generational conflict playing out again, just like in the other films.
It's like, are we destined to repeat
Right.
the bad stuff, too?
Makes you think about nature versus nurture.
It does. Are we destined to repeat those mistakes?
Or can we choose a different path? And that's where I think Marty's arc in this film is so satisfying.
He makes different choices.
He does.
The end.
By the end, he learns from that near-death experience and finally starts to make choices that are driven by logic and responsibility rather than just impulsiveness and pride.
We see it when he avoids that car crash in 1985.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
He breaks free from that cycle of self-destructive behavior.
That was plaguing his family.
Yes, for generations.
Generations. And that's such a powerful message because it's like we're not just products of our past or our genes. We
have the ability to
learn and grow and make choices,
make choices that shape our own destiny.
I love that. So we've got Doc finding love and facing his vulnerabilities, Marty learning to control his impulses and breaking free from this family's past. But wait, what about that blend of classic Western tropes and the sci-fi world?
Oh, it's such a unique combination.
So unique.
And I think one of the most ingenious examples of this blend is that scene where Marty uses a stove door as a makeshift shield during a gunfight.
What?
Channeling his inner Clint Eastwood.
I never put that together.
Right.
That's brilliant. It's like this clever way to pay homage to classic Westerns while still being true to, its own style.
Exactly. And it's not just the action sequences.
Right.
The cinematography, the set design, even the music all work together to create this seamless blend of genres. We're immersed in the world of the Old West, but it's always filtered through the lens of Back to the Future.
I love it.
Which gives it that extra layer of charm and humor.
It does. It does. Okay, we got to address the elephant in the room, though. Or should I say, the potential inconsistencies in time travel logic.
Oh, here we go.
I know, right? It's a bit tricky because on the one hand, we have Doc warning us about the dangers of altering the timeline, right? But then he falls in love and makes decisions that could have huge consequences.
This raises a fascinating question.
Lay it on me.
Does Back to the Future Part 3 play a bit fast and loose with the time travel rules established in the previous films?
Ooh.
Or is it all still internally consistent?
I like it. For example, Doc and Clara staying in the past. That seems to directly contradict everything he said before about, the ripple effects of the smallest change.
Right, and then there's the whole issue of the hoverboard being left in the Old West.
Oh, the hoverboard.
I mean, logically speaking, introducing that kind of advanced technology into the past should have some major consequences.
It should. Yet the film doesn't really dwell on that.
It's almost as if it's inviting us to think critically about its own rules.
Ooh, interesting.
And how they're being applied or perhaps bent in this particular story.
That is such a good point.
It's like the film is acknowledging that the rules of time travel, while important, can sometimes take a backseat to the emotional core of the story.
Yes, it's like, yes, there are rules, but sometimes love
or the pursuit of happiness
outweighs the need to follow those rules strictly.
Which is a pretty compelling argument.
It is.
It speaks to that central theme of destiny versus choice.
Yes.
That runs through the entire trilogy.
Absolutely.
Back to the Future Part 3 seems to be leaning more toward the idea that while we might be influenced by the past, we ultimately have the power to shape our own destinies, even if it means bending the rules a bit.
That is an interesting way to look at it.
It's like the film is suggesting that sometimes the emotional journey and the character's growth take precedence over the strict adherence to the logic of time travel.
I like it. It's a very human way to approach time travel. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's this interplay between logic and emotion, between the rules of time travel and the complexities of human relationships that makes Back to the Future Part 3 such a rich and rewarding film to analyze.
It really is. It's like a film that works on these multiple levels.
Yeah.
Right? It's a thrilling adventure.
Yeah.
But it's also just like a thoughtful look at time choice.
And the power of human connection.
Yes.
And that's just scratching the surface.
Okay.
I think we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait. So we talked about the Wild West, the characters, but there's something else that I noticed in these articles.
Okay.
Even though it's this totally different setting, Back to the Future Part 3 never loses sight of those core relationships.
Right.
And those themes that make the first two films so compelling,
Yeah.
That dynamic between Marty and Doc.
Oh, it's great.
It takes on a whole new dimension in this one.
Yes, and I think it's really fascinating how their roles kind of evolve.
How so?
Well, in the previous films, Doc was the mentor, the guide, leading Marty through all the, craziness of time travel.
Right.
But here in Part 3, we see a shift.
Okay.
Doc becomes more reliant on Marty.
I like that.
Not just for practical help, but for emotional support, too.
Oh, absolutely.
we see Doc grappling with his feelings for Clara.
Yeah.
And he really opens up to Marty in a way we haven't seen before.
And then there's that scene where Marty has to, like, rescue Doc.
Oh, yeah.
From Buford.
From getting shot. Talk about a role reversal.
It's a total role reversal.
It's a key scene because it highlights just how much their relationship has matured.
Over the whole trilogy.
Yes. Over the course of the 3 films.
It's amazing.
They've gone from this, kind of awkward pairing.
The eccentric scientist and the teenager.
Yeah, the teenager who just wants to get back to his own time.
Exactly.
To these 2 individuals who genuinely rely on each other for survival.
I never thought about it like that. That's a really good point. And it's not just about physical survival, is it?
Yeah.
It's emotional, too.
Emotional support as well.
Doc's vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
He needs someone to lean on, and Marty's there.
And Marty steps up.
It shows how deep their friendship has become.
And what I find really clever is how the film uses the events of 1885 to help Marty resolve some of those lingering issues from 1985.
Give me an example.
Specifically, his tendency to get caught up in, reckless behavior.
To prove he's not a coward.
Yes. We talked earlier about Marty's fear of being called yellow.
Yeah.
How that's connected to his family history,
Yeah.
his need to break free from those patterns of the past.
Right.
But it's not until he has that near-death experience in the standoff with Buford that he truly understands the consequences of his impulsiveness.
It's a turning point.
It is a turning point for Marty.
It makes him confront that fact.
Yeah. That his pride, his need to prove himself could have cost him his life.
Wow.
And it's not just about surviving that gunfight,
It's bigger.
It's about how he internalizes that lesson and applies it to his life back in 1985.
When he chooses not to race needles.
Yes. Even though he's being, taunted.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful statement about his growth.
It is.
He finally breaks free from that cycle of self-destructive behavior that we see in his family.
It's like he's choosing to define his own future.
He is.
Instead of letting it be dictated by, the mistakes of the past.
The expectations of others.
It's like he's taking control.
He's finally taking control of his own destiny.
Which, it echoes Doc's line.
Oh, yeah. The future is not set.
There is no fate but what we make.
Yes. It's a great example of how Back to the Future Part 3, even with all the Wild West stuff, it still ties back to those core themes of free will.
Breaking free.
Breaking free from the patterns of the past.
It's so good.
And it's interesting to contrast that with Doc's decision to stay in the past with Clara.
Oh, yeah.
On one hand, it's this incredibly romantic gesture.
We're happy for him. He found love.
Yeah, he's found happiness.
But
it seems to contradict everything he said before.
About the dangers of altering the timeline.
That's the paradox at the heart of this film.
Doc, who was always so cautious, he throws caution to the wind. Just the love. I love it. And I think that's what makes Back to the Future Part 3 so compelling.
It doesn't offer those easy answers.
Or simple solutions, yeah.
It makes us think about, the limits of rules.
Okay.
The complexities of human emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that sometimes love and personal fulfillment might outweigh the need to strictly adhere to logic.
It's a good point. And, we can't ignore those inconsistencies in time travel logic that these articles bring up.
Right. They really dive deep into those.
And it's clear that the film plays a bit loose with the rules.
From the first 2 films. And I think that sparked a lot of debate among fans.
I can imagine.
Some argue that it undermines the internal consistency
Of this trilogy?
Yeah, of the time travel mechanics.
Yeah.
But others, they see it as a deliberate choice by the filmmakers.
Ooh, interesting.
Maybe to prioritize the emotional core of the story over strict adherence to the rules.
Like, for instance,
Yeah.
how do we reconcile Doc staying in the past with his warnings about changing the timeline?
It seems like a direct contradiction.
Right.
But maybe it's more about recognizing that Doc himself has evolved.
Over the course of the trilogy.
He's always been a man of science, but now we see him grappling with, love and emotion.
It's like his understanding of time travel has become more nuanced.
Right. Maybe he realized that the rules
aren't always absolute.
Yeah, there's room for flexibility when it comes to matters of the heart.
Oh, I like that. What about the hoverboard in the Old West?
Oh, the hoverboard.
Logically, that should have had some pretty major consequences.
Huge consequences, yet the film just kind of,
brushes over it. And I think there are a couple of ways to interpret that.
Okay.
On the one hand, it's a plot hole.
Yeah.
The filmmakers, they just wanted to prioritize fun over logic.
Right.
But on the other hand, you could see it as a choice to create a sense of wonder and possibility.
Because after all, Back to the Future has always been about embracing the fantastical.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
And the hoverboard is like this perfect symbol of that.
Right. It represents that futuristic innovation.
And its presence in the Old West, it's like anything is possible.
It's a reminder that Back to the Future Part 3 has a slightly different tone.
Than the others.
Yeah, than the previous films.
This is more lighthearted.
More adventurous.
Yeah.
And perhaps a bit more willing to take those liberties with time travel.
Like, the film is saying, yes, time travel is serious, but let's not forget to have fun.
Exactly.
And that leads to something else these articles talk about, the film's visual style.
Oh, yes.
It makes some interesting choices.
Absolutely.
That set it apart from the previous films.
Back to the Future Part 2 was all about that futuristic technology.
Special effects, yeah.
All those special effects, but Part 3 relies more on those practical effects.
And stunt work, especially in the train sequence.
Oh, that train sequence.
That train sequence is a masterpiece.
A masterpiece of practical filmmaking.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The way they used a real steam locomotive to push the DeLorean to 88 miles per hour.
It's incredible.
Mind-blowing.
It's a testament to the filmmakers' just commitment to creating something spectacular.
And unforgettable.
Yes.
And that sequence, it captures the spirit of the whole trilogy.
It does.
You've got scientific ingenuity, imaginative storytelling,
The pursuit of adventure.
and it's all wrapped up in this incredible visual spectacle.
That's why Back to the Future Part 3 continues to resonate with audiences all these years later.
It's timeless.
It may not be the most logically consistent,
Right.
but it's certainly the most heartwarming.
And emotionally satisfying.
Yes.
Agreed. And, it's a film that makes us want adventure, second chances, the power of connection.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
It does. Speaking of which, we got to address that ending.
Oh, the end.
Doc returning in his time-traveling train.
The train.
Delightful, but a bit perplexing.
It is a bit perplexing.
On the one hand, it's like, perfect Doc.
Yeah, that irrepressible spirit of adventure.
He's not content to settle down.
Even with the love of his life.
It's like, okay, I found love, I helped Marty, now it's time to hit the road.
Exactly, and the train.
The train.
Such a brilliant choice.
Yeah.
Mode of transportation so connected to journey and discovery.
It is, but then remember when he destroyed the DeLorean?
Oh, yeah, to prevent further temporal meddling.
So is this a contradiction?
Well, I think it's open to interpretation.
Okay.
Perhaps Doc realized that the urge to explore time is just too strong to resist.
For anyone.
Even for him.
Or maybe was the DeLorean more symbolic?
Ooh, interesting.
Maybe it was about letting go of the past.
Okay.
Embracing a new chapter.
Where time travel is a tool for discovery.
Not a source of turmoil.
It's a fascinating thought.
It is.
It suggests that Doc has evolved in his understanding of time travel.
Yeah.
He's moved away from a rigid adherence to rules and consequences.
Toward a more nuanced appreciation for its potential.
For personal growth.
Exploration.
Yes.
And that's what makes Back to the Future Part 3 so rewarding.
To revisit.
It encourages us to think big, to challenge our assumptions about time and destiny.
And to embrace the possibility that even the most carefully laid plans can be altered.
By the unexpected.
By fate.
It's a good point. And maybe even a little bit of time travel.
Oh.
But before we jump into the future,
Yeah.
we still have some ground to cover in the present.
Okay.
Let's shift focus to what these articles say about the overall themes of Back to the Future Part 3.
Within the context of the entire trilogy,
Yes.
let's keep diving.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with Back to the Future Part 3.
We have the Wild West, the characters, all those twists and turns.
But what about the big picture? What are those lasting impressions this film leaves us with, especially as the final chapter of the trilogy?
Well, reading through all these articles,
Yeah.
one thing really stood out to me.
What's that?
It's how this film, it still manages to reinforce those core themes we've seen in the entire series.
Like what?
Second chances, the importance of family, making your own choices.
Right. Right.
But it's not just about repeating those themes. It's about how they kind of evolve in this last film.
It's like those themes are filtered through that Wild West setting.
Yeah.
All those unique challenges Doc and Marty face.
Take Marty's arc, for example.
Okay.
It's not just about him going back and fixing things for his family like before.
Right.
This time, it's more personal.
Oh, interesting.
It's about him breaking free from those negative patterns from his past.
And creating a better future.
Exactly, for himself.
Which totally ties into Doc's whole "the future isn't written" thing.
Absolutely.
Marty's in control now.
He is.
It's not just about dodging a car crash,
Right.
It's about being better, more responsible.
You see it in those final scenes.
When he stands up to Needles.
Yeah, and chooses not to race.
So powerful. Because you realize he's not that same impulsive kid from the first film.
He's come a long way.
He has. He has. And even Doc,
Yeah.
who, seemingly contradicts his own warnings.
About changing the timeline.
But he ultimately chooses happiness with Clara.
It's like the film is saying that sometimes those rules we think are set in stone,
Yeah,
they have to bend
they do.
in the face of love, human connection.
Which brings us to another key takeaway.
What's that?
The power of human connection.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's Doc and Marty, Doc and Clara.
Even Marty and his family.
It's like all these relationships, they shape us.
They really do.
And the choices we make.
And it's interesting how those connections, they transcend time and space in this film.
How so?
Think about how Marty's always trying to live up to his family's expectations.
Yeah.
Even though they're not physically there in the Old West.
It shows how deep those bonds are.
It does, no matter where or when we are.
So it's like the people we love, the relationships we have, those are the things that matter.
More than time.
More than rules.
Even more than physics.
I think that's why these films are still so popular,
Decades later.
They tap into those universal themes.
Love, family, friendship.
And that belief that we can create a better future.
Absolutely. And let's not forget,
What?
the entertainment, the pure fun of it.
Back to the Future Part 3 is it's a blast.
It is.
You got humor, action, the Western stuff.
All mixed in.
With that signature charm.
It really does have something for everyone.
Agreed. It's a film that embraces, the fantastic.
Past time travel.
But also the real emotional experiences.
And even though it plays a little loose with the time travel logic, I think that adds to its charm.
I agree. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
It's a story about hope, second chances, and the power of human connection.
And I think those themes resonate.
No matter what.
No matter when you watch it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Back to the Future Part 3, I got to ask, knowing all that we know now about Doc and Clara, the hoverboard, the time-traveling train, would you change anything about the ending?
Do you think it's a fitting conclusion for these characters for the whole trilogy?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is because, Back to the Future reminds us that life, just like time travel, is full of those unexpected turns.
It is.
And sometimes the best journeys are the ones that embrace those moments.
Those leaps of faith.
The belief that the future, while unwritten, is full of possibilities.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep believing in the power of a good story. And until next time, may your own future be filled with as much adventure and heart as a trip in that DeLorean.